Everyone, this is Father McShane, and I hope you're having a good day. Many of you have been watching and praying along with me at Mass daily, or at least on Sundays, and receiving the graces of the Eucharist by making a spiritual communion at those Masses. And I want to thank you. I know this hasn't been an easy time. It's been really difficult, and watching Mass online is a good practice, but it's not the same as being present physically. But I do want to thank you for joining Masses online, either here that we're streaming or other churches around the diocese that you're streaming. You get to hop around and pick your priest, whichever priest you want to listen to preach that morning. That's kind of one of the graces of this, that you get to experience and see different priests celebrating Mass and hearing their homilies. And I encourage you to take advantage of that while you can, because then you'll just be stuck with me once we get back. I know many of you are desiring with all of your hearts to get back to Mass very soon, and that in itself is a grace. That is a grace that God's given all of us. It's a greater appreciation, a greater desire to be at Mass. And that's a wonderful gift that God's given us. And I wanted to make a few catechetical videos on the meaning behind and within the symbols, the gestures, and even the words that we use at Mass, so that when we return, hopefully very soon, we'll be able to enter into the Mass with even greater love of heart and with a deeper appreciation in our minds about what's going on before us. The sacrifice of Calvary, present under the appearances of bread and wine, the body and blood, soul and divinity of Jesus present in the Eucharist, and then offering that to the Father and receiving that sacrament in our very bodies when we come forward for Holy Communion. So these next few videos will just be a simple catechesis on the Mass, and I hope you are able to draw some fruit out of them and are able to appreciate the Mass more deeply. So why don't we begin? So every Sunday Mass begins with a procession from the back of the church, as you see me doing here. And this procession is not just a formality. Nothing we do in the Mass is just a formality. Everything has a deep meaning within it and behind it. So this entrance from the back of the church symbolizes the journey or the pilgrimage that we're all on together. And we move from the back to the front, because think about what's in the back of the church. What's the first thing that you do when you enter the church? You dip your fingers in the holy water font and you bless yourself at the sign of the cross. And even in some churches, you'll see in the back, you'll actually see the baptismal font in the back of the church by the doors as a symbol of our entrance into the church through baptism, right? Baptism is the doorway to all the other sacraments. It's the door through which we enter the church. So that's why we sign ourselves by the doors with holy water as a reminder of our own baptisms the day we entered the church. And then the priests and the servers and the deacons will process from the back, the place of our baptism, to the front of the church, which is the place where the Eucharist is reserved in the tabernacle and the altar on which the Eucharist will be celebrated and offered to the Father. So this journey, this pilgrimage from the back to the front, is a journey that all of us are on together. Even though the priests and the deacons and the servers are the only ones physically making this journey, all the people in the pews stand together as a symbol that they're on this journey with the priests, with the deacons, with the servers. And as they walk forward towards the sanctuary, all the people, all of their hearts should be joining in this procession to the front of the sanctuary, to the source and summit of our faith in the Eucharist. It's also just a beautiful testimony that we're all on a pilgrimage in this life, that we're not in our true homeland, that we're journeying towards heaven. All of us are pilgrims in this life. And the Mass begins with this journey. It's a journey to meet God face to face in the Eucharist. That's really the journey of our whole life. We walk every day on this earth, journeying one step closer to heaven, one step closer to seeing God face to face. All right, now when the priests and the servers and the deacons get to the front near the sanctuary, you see before they ascend the steps of the sanctuary, before they go up the mountain of the Lord, that's what the steps signify, that's what those symbolize, that we're on a journey up the mountain to encounter the Lord, which is why even by the tabernacle, there's even more steps. The closer you come to the Lord, the more steps you have to go up. Even when you're out in the parking lot, the first thing you do to get into the church, you have to ascend steps, right? You're going up a mountain to encounter the Lord. In the Old Testament, all of the encounters with God happened on mountains. You think of Moses receiving the Ten Commandments on a mountain. Jesus was crucified on a mountain. Abraham was about to sacrifice his son on a mountain. So the steps there symbolize going up, right? We're going up to encounter the living God. And before we go up, we first got to go down. We first got to be humble before the Lord. That's why we genuflect. Genuflection is a sign of humility, right? We're coming closer to the earth when we genuflect. We go down, reminding ourselves that we are of the earth. We are humus. That's what that word means. It means earth. So we're humble before the Lord. Before we ascend up to the Lord, we've got to descend down first in humility in ourselves. Also, it's a sign of adoration, right? Whenever I genuflect, sometimes I'll just add a little prayer to it. I'll just say, my Lord and my God. Or I'll just say to Jesus, my King. You're my King, Jesus. Or I love you, Jesus. I had just a short little prayer just to tell him I love him, that I adore him, that he is my King. Just like peasants and even knights would go before their kings in medieval times and kneel before them or even genuflect before them. That's what we're doing here before the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, Jesus, who is present in the tabernacle, body, blood, soul, and divinity. Also, genuflection is something that we see even in secular society. Whenever a man proposes to a woman, right, he gets down on one knee, on the right knee. And what he's doing there is he's lowering himself. And he's making a proposal of his entire life. He's about to give his entire life away to this woman in the form of a proposal. I will spend the rest of my life with you because I love you. So even in secular society, we see this symbol being used. In the church, we can do the same thing. Whenever we genuflect before the Lord, we can remind ourselves we're proposing our entire life to the God of gods, to the Lord of lords. And we want to spend the rest of our life with him, not only here on earth, but even in eternity. And that's what our genuflection is a reminder of, that we love the Lord, that we want to spend the rest of our life with him. And just as a man gets down on one knee before his fiancée or future bride, the Lord is the bridegroom of our souls, and we bow before him, we genuflect before him to propose our entire life to him. All right, after the priest genuflects, he goes around the altar, and you'll see here he's kissing the altar, okay? He's not sniffing it, he's kissing the altar. And why does he kiss the altar? What's going on there? Well, the altar is a symbol of Christ. And underneath the altar, there's 5 marks in the altar that are carved into the altar, symbolizing the 5 wounds of Christ. So the priest goes, and before he begins Mass, he kisses the altar as he would kiss Christ. And who can think of a scene in the Bible where someone kisses Jesus? Okay, think of Judas, the traitor. He kissed Jesus and betrayed him with a kiss. So whenever I go up to the altar and kiss the altar, I think to myself and I pray to Jesus, Lord, let me never betray you. Let me never kiss you with the kiss of Judas. Let me always kiss you with a kiss of faithfulness. Let me have a faithful love in my heart when I serve you. Also, you'll see here this picture that there are relics in the altar. Every altar has relics of saints entombed within them. And this is because when the church was, just getting off the ground in the first few centuries, they were persecuted mightily, especially in Rome, and Catholics would have to celebrate Mass underground. And often they would make a makeshift altar over the top of a martyr, over the top of a saint. And so this is where we get this great tradition of placing the saints' bodies or the bones of saints beneath or even within the altars on top of which we celebrate Holy Mass. And it's also a beautiful reminder, as Hebrews 12 says to us, that at Mass we are surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses, that every Mass, every single person in heaven is present. Every saint is present at every Mass we attend. Wherever we attend Mass in the whole world, it's because what's happening at Mass is that earth is taken up into heaven. And so really all the saints are present at Mass because, well, they're present in heaven. And every Mass is like an experience of heaven. It's like going to heaven for a little moment and seeing Jesus face to face with all of his angels, with all of his saints. One priest even said that whenever the priest holds up the consecrated host, it's like a two-way mirror. What we see with our eyes is bread. But what we see with faith is Jesus, his own body and blood, his soul and divinity, Jesus himself. On the other side, heaven looks out on all of us and sees us journeying and praying for us, cheering us on to get where they are.